Imagine for a moment, you're a hopeful young college student in the vibrant 60s. Your mind is buzzing with ideas, your heart brimming with ambition. You're yearning for knowledge, independence, and the freedom to carve out your own path. But there's one thing casting a shadow on your dreams: money, or rather, the lack of it. College isn't cheap, and you've got bills to pay. Cut to our political heroes of the day. They see you, they hear your dreams, your struggles, and they have an enticing proposition. What if education wasn't a luxury? What if it was a right, affordable and accessible to all? They offer you a golden ticket, a loan. Don't worry about the cost now, they say. Focus on your dreams, get that degree. When you're successful in making money, just pay us back. A small price for your bright future, isn't it? And all they ask for in return is your trust, your vote. This is not just about education, it's about the promise of prosperity, of equal opportunity. But as we go deeper into this narrative, we'll uncover the layers beneath these well-intended promises. Let's take a journey back in time to understand how college, for many, became less a doorway to opportunity and more a gateway into years of financial slavery. Welcome to the untold story of the student loan system.
Once the 18-year-olds could vote, this was a big thing. They lowered the voting age from 21 down to 28, right? So now you have all these 18-year-olds that are about to go to college. And so here's what the politicians said to all the 18-year-olds, the Democratic politicians. They said, you know, you shouldn't have to work your summers. You shouldn't have to have jobs while you're in school. You should just be able to go to school and enjoy yourself. And we're going to make it possible for you to borrow money to go to school by guaranteeing the loans.
The 1960s, a decade of seismic shifts and cultural revolution. The Beatles ruled the airwaves, Martin Luther King shared his dream, and a man stepped on the moon for the first time. But as our nation was reaching new heights in space, something else was brewing on the ground. College campuses were no longer the exclusive domain of the wealthy elite. The wave of democratization and civil rights was pushing open the doors of universities, making them accessible to a much larger, more diverse crowd. With the GI Bill and the Civil Rights Act, more people than ever dreamed of earning a degree. The atmosphere was electric, buzzing with the promise of knowledge and opportunity. But alongside this democratic surge, the cost of higher education was beginning to rise. Universities, competing for prestige and resource, found themselves in an escalating race of costs. State funding for public universities was failing to keep pace. Suddenly, for many Americans, the doors of the world of higher education seemed to be closing as quickly as they had opened. It was into this gap, this breach between ambition and affordability, that our politicians stepped. They had a solution, a new pathway to make higher education affordable for all. But, as we shall see, the seeds sown in the name of progress would sprout into a system of debt, ensnaring millions into its complex roots. In the midst of these changes, in a room likely filled with the aroma of polished mahogany and fresh ink, an idea was born. A simple concept, a way to bridge the divide between ambition and affordability. The answer? Student loans. Our political leaders, in their wisdom or folly, viewed these loans as a magical bullet. Let's give them loans. Loans to fuel their dreams, their futures, and when they're successful, they can pay us back. Everyone wins. It was a powerful pitch. Students saw it as a pathway to opportunity, a way to achieve their academic aspirations without having to worry about the costs up front. Politicians saw it as a voter-friendly policy, a way to champion the cause of education without burdening the budget. The student loan system was born, wrapped in a blanket of promise and optimism. But behind the gleaming facade, the implications were far-reaching. The decision to shift the burden of higher education costs from public funding to individuals created a precedent, one that would shape the landscape of higher education for decades to come. Behind the scenes, politicians were busy spinning tales of prosperity. They marketed college education as a golden ticket, a guarantee for a better life, a lucrative career, and above all, a chance to climb up the social ladder. Get a degree, secure your future, they promised. The picture they painted was enticing. To a generation of young dreamers, this seemed like an unmissable opportunity. The bait was set. As the reel of promises played on, thousands of students bit, signing on the dotted line, unknowingly binding themselves to decades of debt. Yet, the politicians, our self-proclaimed champions of education, were less invested in the future of our system and more in their own political agendas. The student loan system wasn't just a solution to an educational crisis. It was a clever, manipulative tool, a way to gain favors, secure votes, and perpetuate their influence. In their cleverly orchestrated play, they pose as saviors, promising to democratize education while offloading the financial burden onto individuals themselves. Their assurance of prosperity overshadowed the looming dark cloud of debt. The trap was set, and a generation of students walked right into it.
I think that one thing that disturbs the shit out of me is student loans. I mean, one of the worst ways to prepare a kid for the future is to saddle them down with $250,000 worth of debt by the time they graduate from college.
Right. No, absolutely.
And then they get a $50,000 a year job, and they're like, what?
As the years rolled on, so did the consequences of these political schemes. The cost of education began to skyrocket, soaring far beyond the rate of inflation. Universities, emboldened by the influx of loan money, began to charge more. And why wouldn't they? After all, students now had access to a seemingly endless pool of borrowed money. Meanwhile, politicians reclining comfortably in their ivory towers watched as the seeds of their self-serving plot began to bear fruit. As the education costs surged, so did the loans. More debt, and more debt meant more control. The student loan system morphed into a monstrous beast, a juggernaut of debt that kept growing, its insatiable appetite fed by the very individuals it was supposed to serve. Young people, fresh out of college, found themselves shackled by debt, a grim contrast to the bright futures they'd been promised. The more the system expanded, the deeper its roots dug, entwining itself into the fabric of our society. And all along, our dear politicians turned a blind eye, ignoring the growing crisis while enjoying the fruits of their scheme. Meanwhile, offstage from the grand political theater, a different narrative was unfolding. The young dreamers who once saw college as their golden tickets were waking up to a harsh reality. A reality where dreams were eclipsed by debt, futures mortgaged before they even began. Imagine the crushing weight of debt that greets you every morning, shadowing your every step. The constant worry, the never-ending cycle of bills, the relentless pursuit of a balance that seems to only grow larger. This was the reality for millions of young Americans, a reality artfully concealed behind the politicians' facade of opportunity. Many were forced to delay life milestones, buying homes, starting families, even marriage, all because of the specter of student debt. Dreams of starting businesses, of taking risks, were often shelved in favor of safer but less fulfilling options. The cost was not just financial, but emotional, impacting mental health and quality of life. And yet in the hollowed halls of the government, our politicians sipped their champagne, basked in their victories, and reveled in the power they'd garnered. The system they'd built had become a self-perpetuating machine, churning out indebted citizens and fueling their political agendas. The cycle of debt had become a cycle of power, but beneath the glossy surface of this system, a simmering discontent was beginning to boil. A generation bound by debt was beginning to question, to challenge, and to rise.
I mean, obviously the politicians are like soulless and the bankers are just trying to make money, but that no one in the university ever has the basic human decency to look at one of these kids who goes, hey, you know you're spending $150,000 on a gender studies major? Just think about that.
As the murmurs of discontent grew louder, our politicians were quick to mount a defense. After all, they'd crafted the system, and admitting its flaws was tantamount to admitting their own. They rationalized, justified, and in the grand tradition of politics, deflected. Education is an investment, they argued, and investments come with risks. Shouldn't those who benefit from education bear some of the cost? The debate was twisted into a question of personal responsibility, a deft maneuver to absolve themselves of the systemic mess they had created. They pointed to success stories, to the individuals who had climbed out of the trenches of debt, using these rare outliers to justify the broken system. But what about the millions still trapped in the cycle of debt? Their struggles were conveniently overlooked, their stories untold. In their echo chamber of self-righteous justification, our politicians ignored the crux of the problem. A system that profits off the dreams and aspirations of its youngest citizens. A system that replaced the chains of physical bondage with the shackles of financial servitude, or financial slavery. Let's turn the lens onto the institutions that are at the heart of this tale. the universities. They stand as architectural marvels and intellectual powerhouses, but behind the grand facades and academic prowess lies an economic machine, finely tuned and wildly successful. Universities in the US are no longer simply centers of learning. They've morphed into multi-billion-dollar corporations. They rack up revenue that rivals and often surpasses that of Fortune 500 companies, and yet they enjoy a significant advantage over these commercial behemoths. They pay no taxes.
Wait, what?
Yes, you heard that right. These institutions with their billion-dollar endowments and sky-high tuition fees are exempt from taxes thanks to their non-profit status. Meanwhile, their students, the very people who fuel these vast coffers, graduate into a world of financial hardship, burdened by an insurmountable debt. Consider the irony. The universities prosper, building state-of-the-art facilities, funding extensive research projects, and paying astronomical salaries to their top administrators, all on the backs of the young minds they claim to nurture. It's an empire built on the promise of education, a promise that, for many, turns into a lifetime of financial slavery. It's a system that keeps the rich universities richer, the powerful politicians more influential, and the students, the future of our nation, entangled in a relentless web of debt. Stories, they say, are defined by their endings. Our narrative doesn't have to conclude with a lifetime of debt. It doesn't have to be about dreams deferred and futures mortgaged. No, this story, our story, can have a different ending. We're not just merely spectators in this tale, powerless and resigned to our fates. We are the protagonists. We wield the pen that can rewrite the narrative. Imagine a world where education serves as a bridge to a brighter future, not a ball and chain that weighs us down. Picture a system where students are valued for their potential, not their ability to pay. Envision an era where politicians champion to education, not for their gain, but for the benefit of the society that they're sworn to serve. This isn't just a dream, it's a possibility, within our reach, but it requires action, a collective voice raised against the injustices of the present, a unified demand for a better tomorrow. This is our call to arms. It's time to reject the notion that education is a privilege to be bought and sold. It's time to challenge the system that binds us in debt, to question the motives of those who perpetuate this cycle. We have a voice, we have power, we have the ability to reshape the future of education. It's high time that we use it. Together, let's strive for a system that uplifts, not only one that enslaves. Let's forge a future where education is a gateway to success, not a pathway into debt. This is our fight. This is our time, for us and for the generations to come.
Albert Einstein once said, "Everybody's a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid."
What if we question the very necessity of traditional universities? What if we ventured beyond the familiar framework and entertained the prospect of a complete overhaul? We're already witnessing an emergence of alternative educational models, coding boot camps, online courses, vocalizational training programs. These are no longer fringe operations, but legitimate pathways to rewarding careers. But can we take this a step further? Imagine a world where companies, the ultimate beneficiaries of an educated workforce, establish their own educational institutions. These corporate universities would be tailored to provide the skills and knowledge directly relevant to the industry, eliminating the disconnect that often exists between academic curriculum and market demand. Students could receive practical, hands-on education, potentially even earning while they learn, reducing the need for expensive student loans. It's a radical idea, but perhaps it's precisely what we need. A radical departure from the traditional and a brave leap towards the unconventional. Of course, this idea isn't without its challenges. Issues of access, quality control, and diversity come to mind. But aren't these the same challenges we face with our current system? Let's remember that the pathway to reform isn't paved with easy solutions. It's strewn with hard questions, innovative ideas, and bold actions. But isn't that the essence of progress? So, we implore you, question, challenge, act. Talk about it with your friends. Write about it online. Bring it up in your classrooms. Demand accountability from your universities, your politicians, your government. Remember, change isn't an event, it's a process. It requires persistence, resilience, and the courage to stand up against a system that's been deeply entrenched. but together we can create a tidal wave of transformation. This is our call to arms. Will you answer it? Thank you for taking the time to listen, to understand, and hopefully to act. Until next time, stay curious.